The Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, moving forward with this. I want to put up a tweet right now from our Chad program. Fox has spoken with one senior aide and one source close to the House inquiry of Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Of course, the DA there, also from Chad program. We got no heads up about this, said one source. We are hearing about this and digesting it in real time. All right, that coming in from our Fox News Capitol Hill correspondent Chad program. No heads up about this. We are adjusting and digesting this in real time. So, of course, major breaking news here on Live Now from Fox. And, of course, we want to continue to cover all of these major stories. We're going to leave this tweet up right now as we continue to set up some legal minds on this major story. As we continue to follow this major story, of course, this coming in from our Chad program saying that sources, we had no heads up about this. We are about this and digesting it in real time. I want to give a live look out there at the Manhattan's DA. This according from Chad program. One senior aide, one source close to the House inquiry of Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. A look at downtown Manhattan as we continue to follow this story. We want to go out to another legal mind right here on Live Now from Fox, a friend of the program as we continue to major breaking news. We're going to bring in Randy Zelin right now here on Live Now from Fox as you're continuing to be around. So, Randy, obviously on your phone, we appreciate you joining us. Initial reactions, what do we know about this and how big of a moment is this?
Well, let's work backwards. It is an enormous moment. It is an earth-shattering moment. It is groundbreaking. It's difficult to conjure up the appropriate description. Never before in our history has a president, sitting, former or otherwise, ever been indicted before. So, yes, this is truly a moment where we all have to kind of stop and wonder and say, how the hell did we get here? What do we know? We don't know very much. I mean, let's face it, every day we're hearing the grand jury's meeting, the grand jury's not meeting, the grand jury hasn't bothered, the grand jury can't be bothered, the grand jury can be bothered. The last we all heard, the grand jury wasn't convening again until after the holidays, and now suddenly an indictment is handed up.
It is certainly major news, Randy, and obviously unprecedented is going to be a word thrown out quite a bit. But give me a little bit of breakdown. How did a grand jury, what is a grand jury, and how do they kind of come to this? Because it's a secretive process, and maybe how did they come to this moment ultimately?
Well, let's start out with what the founding fathers envisioned. Coming out of the tyranny that we experienced and dealing with the way the English handled things, the founding fathers decided that before anyone gets taken to trial on a serious crime, we want a bunch of ordinary citizens to sit down, listen to the evidence from the prosecutor, and decide whether or not, in fact, that person should be taken to trial. So the purpose of the grand jury was exactly that. It was a way station. It was a guardrail. It was a stopgap measure to stop the power of the government from just willy-nilly indicting people and taking them to trial, or charging people and taking them to trial. So the purpose of an indictment is to have a bunch of citizens, anywhere from 16 to 23 citizens, sit in a room, listen to evidence, and decide whether or not the prosecutor has it right, whether it's more likely than not that that person committed a crime. So the grand jury, the division was to be a check on the power of the government. As Judge Saul Wackler said, grand jury these days could indict a ham sandwich. So we take what the grand jury does with a grain of salt. We have the purpose of it, the vision of it, and the reality of it.
Thank you so much, Randy Zelin, of course, continuing to join us here on Live Now from Fox. And I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. Our last guest attorney there, criminal defense attorney Matt Timpanic, talked a little bit about there won't be any shortcuts for Trump. He will get his fingerprints. He will get all of the stuff. Do you believe that to be true as well?
Well, certainly there are things that are set in stone. He will be fingerprinted. He will have his photograph taken. There is a processing process. However, he will be extended the courtesy of what we call a surrender. His door will not be kicked in at 6 o'clock in the morning. He will not be brought out in handcuffs. He will not be subjected to a perp walk. Maybe he wants that, but he will be afforded the courtesy of a surrender where he can, if he wants, he can fly into New York, go directly to the district attorney's office, be processed, and then be brought right up to the courtroom to be arraigned on his indictment. It may very well be that it could be worked out that he'll be processed remotely and he could do the entire arraignment remotely from Florida. Certainly the Secret Service would have the ability to handle the fingerprints and the photographs and get them transmitted to the Department of Criminal Justice Services. So maybe it all gets done remotely. Again, he doesn't want that, but I'm sure the normal accommodation of a surrender will be made, and with a former president, maybe above and beyond.
Definitely. Randy Zelin, thank you so much for joining us. I also want to bring in my colleague, Andrew Kraft, here on Live Now from Fox, and I'm sure he's just learning of this news as well. So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. First, just kind of what are your thoughts and how do we move forward from here?
Yeah, Randy, thanks so much for being with us. So, Randy, my question, though, to you is 24 hours ago, Fox sources were telling us that this was potentially not coming until late April or early May. What's going on here? Did DA Alvin Bragg kind of pull a pump fake on all of us? We were not expecting this. Now this is being reported that he has, in fact, been indicted, so much so that we were told that the special grand jury was not meeting for, the next 3 to 4 weeks, and now we're being told that they have voted for an indictment. What's Bragg doing here, do you think?
Listen, he may be doing nothing. We don't know where these sources are coming from. In fact, so much of the sources that we were getting our information from was coming from the Trump camp, where he was telling everyone that he was going to be indicted, he was going to be arrested last Tuesday. So it may very well be that the District Attorney Bragg just decided, I ain't saying anything. Let people wonder, let them pontificate, let them say whatever they want. We're going to put our head down, do our job, present our case, and the grand jury will vote. So the grand jury voted. They haven't voted to indict. The indictment will be handed up. It will be filed with the clerk, and Mr. Trump will be provided with a date to appear before a judge and he will be arraigned on his indictment. It's a formality. It's a ministerial process. He will be released in his own recognizance. He shows up. The judge will confirm that he's had an opportunity to review the indictment with his lawyer. The judge will ask him whether or not he wants the indictment to be read aloud, which is his right. He will waive that right, though. With Mr. Trump, maybe he won't. He will enter a plea of not guilty, and the case will be adjourned.
Okay, but Randy, my other question to you, we got reporting today from the Wall Street Journal, confirmed by Fox, that now DA Bragg's office is also looking into this other hush money payment made during the 2016 presidential campaign, having to do with former Playboy model Karen McDougal, to which, according to all of our sources at the time, that a hush money payment was made to her to buy her silence when she went to the National Enquirer with her story of an alleged affair. So this might be yet another resurrection of the hush money payment case with yet another person, Karen McDougal.
Well, that would certainly explain why David Pecker was brought back into the grand jury, because as I understand it, he was connected directly to that catch and kill story involving Karen McDougal. So listen, right now, DA Bragg may be pushing all of his chips in. And listen, are you folding or are you calling? Are you raising me? What are you doing? But the most important thing is the grand jury apparently has spoken. They have determined that it was more likely than not that Mr. Trump committed what we assume to be is falsifying business records as a felony as a result of the upgrade from the misdemeanor to the felony, because the falsification of the business records was in connection with, I'm assuming, the election law campaign violations. And we are seeing something. This is a moment we can all look back on. It's something that's never happened before.
Never happened before. Certainly unprecedented. Randy Zelin, Andy Mack here alongside my colleague Andrew Kraft. And I do have to ask you a question because we're also talking about witnesses during this. And we had Robert Costello a few weeks ago, but also Michael Cohen. How big was that testimony, and potentially what did they say? How important was that witness testimony in this grand jury and for those jurors to hear from them personally, people close to the former president?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Mr. Costello's testimony was given short shrift and did not resonate with the grand jury because ostensibly he was a defense witness who was brought in to discredit Michael Cohen. Clearly, it was Mr. Cohen who was able to connect the dots and make the connection as to the falsification of the business entries, how it was impacted as far as the election law is concerned. So I think it would be safe to say that the grand jury found Mr. Cohen's testimony to be credible, and those soothsayers, those talking heads that say, "Oh, he's a liar, he's a convicted felon." Listen, bad people and people who've gotten into trouble know what other bad people do because they were there, and an effective prosecutor will explain that to a jury. Listen, you don't have to like him, you don't have to want to have dinner with him, but bad people know what other bad people do because bad people tend to do bad things with other bad people.
Okay, so Randy, what about the special grand jury, those members? Does it have to be unanimous? Does it have to be a majority? What's going on here? We were reporting last week there was dissension among the ranks of the jurors. They could not decide. That's probably why this was maybe delayed a little bit. Now this is coming down. If you're just joining us, we're almost at the top of the hour. Former President Trump has been indicted there in New York, in Lower Manhattan, by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. So, Randy, what are the mechanics that go into a vote like this with a special grand jury? Is it unanimous?
Right. No, unlike a petit jury, what we call the jury trial, the trial jury, where a unanimous jury is required. We have no similar requirement as far as the grand jury goes. In fact, the number can fluctuate. It can be anywhere from 16 up to 23 people sit in the grand jury. And no, they do not have to be unanimous. So there can be dissension and there can be disagreement. That is okay. And of course, the burden of proof, the standard is different. It is what we call a preponderance of the evidence. Was it more likely than not? Think of a scale going from 50-50 to 51-49 as opposed to proof beyond a reasonable doubt, where you have to have a unanimous jury determined beyond a reasonable doubt, which is, call it 95-5, call it 97-3, call it, I don't need any more information before I make a terribly, terribly important decision in my life. I have enough information to decide. I don't have a reasonable doubt. So they are very, very different.
Randy, let's talk about what, I guess, maybe privileges are conferred upon a former president, if any. We are in uncharted territory. This has never happened before. We're going to sound like a broken record today saying that. But does a former president, when they have to get booked, when they have to, surrender to arrest to fight these charges, are they conferred upon any privileges because of their former office?
Well, we certainly can't talk about any rules, regulations, statutes, or laws because this has never happened before. What we can talk about is accommodations, and we can talk about courtesies. And I am sure there will be courtesies and accommodations which will be afforded to the former president. The irony of it is he's not going to want it. He's actually going to want to be perp walked. He's going to want to be shown shackled, handcuffed, thrown around. I mean, because that will gin up his base. That is what his people will want to see. The extra accommodation he will be afforded, I think, as a former president, will be the opportunity to appear remotely. I think that should be on the table. Plus, it would be easier in terms of Manhattan not being subjected to protesting and the potential for violence and other stuff that we just don't need right now in our city, which will certainly come on the heels of the president going down to 1 Hogan Place, otherwise known as 100 Center Street. So I would think they would offer him the opportunity to do this remotely from Florida.
Yeah, that'll be interesting based on all of this new information we're learning. Randy Zelin, I do have to ask you, and obviously not a major political mind here, obviously legal expert, we're following you, but 2024, how does maybe an indictment change that dynamic? How much does the criminal system kind of change that dynamic?
Not at all. You need 3 qualifications to be president. You've got to be at least 35. You've got to be born in this country, and you've got to be here for at least 14 years. Lyndon LaRouche ran for president, and he was a convicted felon. Back in the 20s, somebody ran for president from the jail. The only thing that would prevent the president, the only disqualifier would be if you were convicted of sedition or treason.
All right, thank
that
you.
Would be in the 14th Amendment. But other than that, this indictment means nothing. In fact, there are those who would say that this indictment may actually boost his ratings.
All right, Randy Zelin, Andrew Kraft, are there any parting words, Kraft, or any other questions you need to ask Randy Zelin, because this is certainly a big moment in history, in U.S. history as well?
No, we are in uncharted territory, like I said, uncharted waters. Obviously, there are so many political implications to this. Andy, like you were asking Randy there, I've been asking our legal experts, you know, can you still mount a campaign, mount a bid for the presidency under indictment? Randy kind of elucidated that very, very clearly there. Yes, you can. There are very few requirements. They are outlaid in the Constitution. And Randy was citing that New York Times report by Maggie Haberman saying that former President Trump, he wants to be perp walked. He wants to show strength in this moment to his supporters. Obviously, he is weakness averse, Randy, as we should say. That would be his words. And so we will see. And so we're going to be relying on folks like Randy, like Doug Burns, to provide legal analysis as we approach the top of the hour. We're also going to be relying on Fox 5 New York, their reporters who are in full coverage as well, Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Randy, any parting words we want to leave you before we let you go here, obviously on your phone, short notice, but we appreciate any parting words.
It is, again, it is unprecedented. It is a privilege to be on with you. It is a privilege to be part of all of this. And me, like the rest of your viewers, we're going to have to sit back, break out our popcorn, and see the way things unfold.
Yeah, as it continues to be very, very fluid, Randy Zelin, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us constantly here on Live Now from Fox, providing those insights.